changes. I commend this bill to the House.
I call Sue Williams, CO.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. I think that last presentation by that member reflects the heartless attitude of this government, and I can say to that member, sir, that he is not going to return to Parliament in 2014. Sir, this bill introduces a significant shift in the direction of welfare reform and will have an immediate impact on the well-being and the welfare of many low-income individuals and families. The government's reform will have an immediate impact on the financial and emotional future of those being targeted by this government, namely young people and sole parents. The greatest concern for me, sir, is that it will have the most severe effect on the lives of children who belong to families living in poverty or living below the poverty lines. As the Children's Commissioner submitted at the submission stage, this bill makes no requirement to take up the child or the children affected by these reforms their best interests. It doesn't take into consideration the best interests of the children. Labour opposes the reform contained in this bill. These reforms are poorly designed, they're confusing, they lack safeguards, and they destroy trust in our young people, and our Salvation Army submitted is fundamentally inconsistent with the intention of the Social Security Act. I agree, sir, with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, who submitted that this bill discriminates on human rights in terms of age, gender and employment status. I believe when the Women's Health Action Trust said that they gave a comprehensive submission based on evidence opposing this bill because they said it undermines women's sexual and reproductive human rights. We know, sir, from the evidence that this is so readily available that child poverty exists now in New Zealand. We also know from the evidence that child poverty increases when there is rising unemployment, rising underemployment, and that's happened throughout the 4 years that this government has been in power, the consistent trending of rising unemployment, rising underemployment. We also know that when more people are working part-time or casual jobs, there is more poverty. When families have low incomes relative to living costs, larger gender wage gap, and women who choose to become mothers are often penalised in the workforce, as they are now under current environment created by this government, there is increasing child poverty. We also know from evidence that when governments cut benefits or limit eligibility for benefits or have lower income taxes and introduce higher goods and services taxes, that these policies also increase child poverty. This is the current economic environment upon which this government is introducing these significant changes to New Zealand's social security system. Every group or individual that I heard submit were quite scathing of the collapse process which this government drove the introduction of this bill. And they gave very little time to individuals and organisations to prepare submissions. According to the Law Society, there were groups that could not submit because of the government's collapse approach to public submission. The Council of Trade Unions probably best summed up the feelings of submitters when they said that the government makes a mockery of democracy when they ran through significant changes in such a short time frame which limits public contribution. The government reform, sir, targets young people and sole parents. We were advised that it is the expectation of this government that when these young people reach the age of 18 years, they will be in employment and will no longer require a benefit. I find that very difficult to believe, given the approach is more of a big stick than carrot. But even if the carrot was accepted, what jobs were available to people? Many submitters questioned the government on where are the jobs. They questioned what this government was doing to enable the creation of genuine, meaningful and high-valued jobs that pay well for workers and their families. Dr. Robin Quinn submitted that having people work instead of just accepting money is an excellent idea, but it won't succeed unless there are jobs for people. He also said that the same question every other submitter made about where are the jobs, and said if government believes it has the right to bully people into work, it should also ensure jobs exist for people. Under the government's bill, sole parents will be required to find part-time work when their youngest child is 5 years old. They will be expected to find full-time work when their youngest child is 14 years or older. These changes will apply to women receiving the widow's benefit, domestic purposes benefit, and the domestic purposes benefit for women alone. It is expected that 56,300 people with children under 5 will be forced to find work. 45,000 people, we were advised, with children aged 5 to 14 years will be pushed towards finding full-time, part-time work. 21,300 people, we were advised, with children aged 14 years or who do not have children will be pushed to have full-time work. Sanctions, sir, will apply if people fail to meet these expectations, and the government wants to introduce this bill in July. The CCS Disability Action submitted, this bill does not address barriers of single parents with disabled children forced to enter the workforce. The Wellington People's Centre pointed out to government MPs that job matching was a huge issue, that many solo mums or widows were on casualised part-time work, paying wages or receiving wages that ensured they struggled continually to make ends meet. Kay Brereton was lost for words to describe the absurdity of government's bill dictating that if you have a child, you won't get a benefit. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom said that paid work is not more important than unpaid work or child rearing and caring for those in need. Graham Powell submitted, sir, said that this bill smacks of social engineering of the worst kind and is flawed from a conceptual and practical basis. He further said, this is Mr. Powell, that changes will increase numbers of job seekers all bidding for low-paid jobs, thus driving down wages. Dr. Anita Lacey of the Auckland Action Against Poverty said, the bill does nothing to address the real causes of poverty in New Zealand, including poorly performing economy, low wages, a shortage of decent jobs, benefits which are too low for many people to live on, and job insecurity. The Auckland Women's Centre said that they showed evidence shows that women affected by this bill are already under-resourced, they live in poverty, have bad health, and need to be supported rather than being bullied by this government. The Auckland Women's Centre opposes the bill and describes it as mean-spirited and punitive. They said women should be supported and given real choice, not compelled by or bullied by this government. Labour believes that by and large New Zealanders want to work, sir. This is supported by the evidence that we've seen with the Household Labour Force Survey, the thousands of people that line up whenever there are jobs available in supermarkets, but also the thousands of New Zealanders who are leaving our shores every week for Australia. Is clear evidence, sir, that this government is taking this country in the wrong direction. We believe that those currently in need of government support deserves a set of measures grounded in evidence and the reality of the current economic environment. People require a set of measures that address the barriers that exist in moving from the welfare system and into work. They deserve to be treated with dignity as human beings deserving of the means to support and sustain themselves and their families. People need jobs. People want to work. People want to earn an income that gives them dignity as a human being to support their children. The reforms introduced by this government, sir, treat people disrespectful, treat them as nothing less than what people are demanding. I now want to conclude, sir. The behaviour of the chair and some members of that committee during the public submission stage, sir, were appalling. And aided and abetted by that chair. Sir, they consistently challenge submitters. They consistently undermine submitters. Given the the collapsed framework that the public had, sir. And I say this government is taking us in the wrong direction.
Sorry to interrupt the
taking
honourable
New Zealand
member.
in the wrong
His time has expired. Order. Order. I call Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.